Hi guys, welcome back to the Daily Dreamer. Thanks so much for joining me today. It's much appreciated. I'm just gonna get started on this because my dreams are crazy. All right, so I wake up, come to, and this was one of 4 dreams this evening. I wake up, come to, and I'm on a subway station, and we're just going quick, fast, and I'm with a friend of mine, and you can see out the window that there are just huge candy pieces. It was great. They were big candy fruit pieces is what it was. And I was just mesmerized by it because I could see the actual sugar crystals. So that was great because they were like clear as day, almost like diamonds. I love bright shiny things. Anyway, so we're going fast. And I'm mesmerized by the candy pieces. And I happen to look over at my friend, and she's a little confused because she knows that her stop is coming up. However, she couldn't find the out. Okay, she couldn't find the exit, and so she had asked for help. And so I stopped looking at my candy pieces, and I go and I say, "Oh, your destination's right up there on the right." And she says, "No, I'm not going there. I'm not going there." And I said, "Well, that's your destination." And she said, "No, it's not. No, it's not. I change." Okay, so we come to a screeching halt because someone in the back had pulled the string. So we come to a screeching halt, and the door opens, and she refuses to go out there because it's all dark, just dark. Not even space, it was just dark. And I said, "You gotta go." And she says, No, I'm not getting off here. And I said, "Yes, you are." And I said, "This was meant for you. Look at your ticket." And she says, "I don't have a ticket anymore." She goes to throw it out there. Well, it just disappears. And so I push her out. And what happens? I don't know. I woke up. It was really disappointing. So, of course, naturally, that being one of 4 dreams, I write it down and go back to sleep. I wake up. What do? I go into a meditative state. And what comes up for me on that particular dream? Spiritual bypassing. What is spiritual bypassing, folks? Let's go discuss this, shall we? What comes to mind when you think of spirituality? Is it pictures of wonderful, beautiful temples? Is it Buddhas? Is it ascended masters or angels? Maybe you're one of those people where it's a majestic mountaintop or a beautiful sunset. We tend to associate spirituality, the heightened state of being, with feelings of happiness, joy, inner peace, contentment. And while this may be true, many of us become intoxicated, if you will, distracted by these attractive images of spirituality. And in doing so, what we end up doing is we end up avoiding the darker, painful, more exhausting side of that path. We repress the negative emotions that arose from a situation in life. Some people use spirituality to avoid, suppress, or escape from these uncomfortable issues in life. For example, issues, maybe you had a loss of a loved one. Maybe it's a relationship breakup, family problems, childhood abuse. Maybe there's loneliness, self-esteem issues, fear, maybe any mental or emotional, or maybe even health issues. These arise in your life, and then you turn to spirituality for the feel good of it. And that's fine to a certain point. But at some point, you have to deal with the negative aspect of it. Because otherwise, all you're going to do is just keep hiding those negative emotions. And at some point, those negative emotions end up turning into shadow energy that then turn into your shadow self. And then when another life's lemon comes your way, what happens? You're not in control. That shadow energy pops up, and now you're reacting. And that's not good, folks. And you want to know why you're reacting? It's because you didn't take a moment to deal with the negative aspects that came from the original situation to begin with. You're bypassing your spirituality. To many people, spirituality becomes a crutch. It's a way of standing back up, if you will, and that's fine. We all need support some point or another in our lives, but the problem is that when you use it all the time, it becomes a drug that you're dependent on, and you're not dealing with the root of the cause. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists." When we use spirituality as a defense mechanism to ward off the negative aspects in our own existence, well, then it becomes a hindrance to us. It prevents us from developing the tools that we need to be able to deal with issues down the road. And then we end up finding ourselves needing again to rely on that crutch for the feel good of it so that we can get through it. We end up denying ourselves characteristics for our own spiritual growth, like courage, authenticity, or wholeness. While the use of spirituality can also provide us with a very solid, great wall to hide behind so that we're protected, in doing so, it actually traps us in this illusion of a jail cell that everything is happy. Everything is perfect, and that's not the case at all. We have to learn to deal with the negative emotions that arose from the original situation. So instead of masking and hiding them, we are able to deal with them and confront them so that we can become stronger for the next life situation. We know that we have to keep these energies in check. That's why that 5 minutes a day for that maintenance is very important. When the next life's obstacle comes up your way, if you're able to maintain and deal with those negative emotions, you're not acting out of anger and rage now. Now the cool, calm, collected, compassionate you is able to be in control. That's what you want, to be in control. Not your shadow energy, not the reactions, not the anger, not the rage. Because when that becomes in control, then it keeps going and gets you stuck in that loop, in that mindset. So we want to make sure that we're aware that spiritual bypassing is something that we are not doing when we have to deal with a traumatic life event. There is a quote that says, "What gives light must endure the burning." Pursuing and living the light of the complete blissful state of awareness is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But in order to do that, you also have to be able to say and be able to put yourself on fire, yourself. You have to destroy the illusion, okay? You have to understand your emotions from the happiest of it to the darkest depth of it, so that you can go ahead and reach out to the farthest, ends of the world, if you will, for other souls, so that you can feel and understand what they're going through. If you're going to be the light, you got to be able to set yourself on fire to be able to deal with that. Want to know a couple ways if you can tell if someone is spiritually bypassing themselves or not? Let's take a look, shall we? Well, okay. This was me. You have the optimistic bypasser. These are the people that love to be optimistic about everything in life. They love to laugh. They love to smile. They love to forcefully be optimistic. In other words, they say, focus on the positive. That glass is half full. Don't let that frown get you down. It's those people. They use optimism as a way of avoiding the troublesome realities of life. The optimistic bypasser, they are the ones who are afraid to get mad. That was me for the longest time. It was the inability to deal with the negative emotions. You have the victim bypasser. When one becomes a victim of their own gifts, this takes away the pressure of responsibility for shaping their own satisfying life and taking responsibility for their own happiness. Some of these people identify as empaths, if you will, and you got to be careful about that. It's a fine line. You got to be careful not to make the mistake. And an example of this type of bypasser would be like if someone said, well, it's your fault I'm not happy. It's because I am so sensitive that I'm not able to live that life of joy. Well, that's the victim bypasser. You have the psychonaut bypasser. These are the spiritual seekers that explore the frontiers of the mind. the soul, and reality, all through the use of psychedelic drugs such as LSD, DMT, mushrooms, mescaline, any other drug that, alters the mind of perception and existence, if you will. And there is nothing wrong with that on an occasional basis if you want to go inward or outward. But it's those folks that use it all the time because that's the only way they're able to reach that heightened state of awareness. They're definitely bypassing those negative emotions because you certainly do not need to use psychedelic drugs to reach that heightened state of awareness each and every time. It's definitely attainable without that. You have the horoscope bypasser, love those ones. When we frequently look outside of ourselves for help and guidance, as with the case with horoscopes or maybe even psychics, we are failing to actually tap into our inner springs and our own inner wisdom and our strength. We are allowing external predictions to control the outcome of our lives. The horoscope bypasser is derived from a fear and mistrust of ourselves, the inability to make decisions, the inability to deal with anything that comes our way. And therefore, we put that power out there and place it on the horoscope of the day. Okay, then we have the saint bypasser. Since we are little, we are always taught that spiritual people are very kind, compassionate, and saintly. And we continued to repeat this story over and over until we became adults. But in doing so, we ended up kind of lying to ourselves because we seem to think that those that are saintly couldn't possibly have a negative side to them. Those that are saintly couldn't possibly be unspiritual with any negative emotions about themselves. It's a type of bypassing that we're avoiding, our own shadow selves. Everybody has a shadow self. Then we have the spirit guide bypasser. Those are the people that say, well, I have an angel protecting me. In some spiritual traditions, it is a God who protects. In others, it's an angel. Some have animals. Some have ascended beings that protect them. And no matter who the spirit guide is, the belief is that they're being protected. And that is pleasing to the mind, but it can be very harmful to the soul. It can be very limiting because we're placing our faith in another being's power to ward off danger and keep us safe. That in itself is committing a classic spiritual bypass, if you will, because we're avoiding the responsibility of ourselves and our lives. We're sidestepping a tough development of courage and resilience for ourselves. We are not children, but when we think of ourselves as so, we mold our lives in such a way that we fail to develop strength of a spiritual character for ourselves. Spirit guides are there to teach, not babysit. We have the praying bypasser. We can't forget about those. It's similar to the spirit guide bypasser, but these people pray, and they pray all the time, no matter what the situation is. They are circumventing personal responsibility by putting faith in a higher being to solve all of the problems now and in the future. And while praying can be a very healthy practice, it can also become very limiting and destructive. That's a fine line. Then we have the guru bypasser. When we have these situations arise and we tend to latch on to maybe a guru, a shaman, a priest, a spiritual teacher, we learn and we grow from them. However, if we put too much attachment on them, it can serve as another form of spiritual bypassing. While not everyone has the ability to follow the path of spirituality independently, when we begin to worship another living being, we fall in love with the rose-colored illusory image that we have of the teacher, rather than the essence of the teachings. We don't think of discovering truth for ourselves. We allow someone else to do that for us, in their words of the guru or the master, because we treat it as scripture. And that just subtracts from our own growth and our own mastery on our own personal spiritual journey. Okay, then there's the 5-finger bypasser. So as we go on our spiritual quest, we start seeing things that we don't see normally. We can start seeing through lies. We can start seeing through delusions. And sometimes that makes us frustrated because we can start seeing through people. However, when we get caught up in the fact that, well, everything outside of me is wrong, then you start pointing fingers. And you start pointing fingers to the outside world, and you start dedicating your life now, because you're in a cycle, to the self-righteous quest of the fact that, well, everything else is wrong but me, because, well, I found my spiritual self. Be careful. That's a spiritual bypassing way, okay? At the very roots, the 5-finger bypasser is sourced out of fear and avoidance. And it's a powerful form of procrastinating and putting off dealing with those negative emotions. Guys, there are many forms of spiritual bypassing out there. These are just some of the few. It can be absolutely terrifying to personally expose yourself in the most profoundly vulnerable part of your being in the process of purification. No one said it was going to be easy. No, to deal with any of those negative emotions that make you ugly and angry and full of rage. It's not a pretty process. But I'm telling you guys, slowly, if you're able to set yourself afire to all of those illusions out there, you'll eventually see that life is much more clear, more connected, deeply satisfying, and an undeniable, more joyful life awaits for you if you're able to deal with the good and the bad. So don't become a bystander in your journey, folks. Take 5 minutes a day. Till next dream, thanks so much for joining me for the Daily Dreamer, and many blessings to you.